Welcome to our Advent 2020 Bartcast. Two men on the margins of society had visions of a woman clothed with the sun, 1,500 years apart. This presentation overviews this remarkable tradition that occurs each year at the heart of Advent. In this Advent season, we sing, O come, Emmanuel. Yet our civilization has constructed a world into which it is increasingly difficult for the child of God to enter. Case in point, the Israeli security wall surrounding Bethlehem today. Yet the presence of life and liberation keeps finding ways to meet us in our darkness. And one notable example was the appearance of Nuestra Señora la Virgen de Guadalupe, whose feast day we celebrate on December 12th. This is a venerable tradition, especially here in the American Southwest, where we live and work. For half a millennium, Guadalupe has animated cultures of resistance and justice, both popular and political. The memory and veneration of Guadalupe is literally tattooed on the consciousness of most Latinos in the Southwest. And Cesar Chavez never marched without La Guadalupana's accompaniment.
As this delightful 18th century image suggests, even God reveres this great epiphany, which in a decade will be 500 years old. If you want to learn more, a popular informative book on this historical, cultural, and political tradition is Virgil Elizondo's Guadalupe, Mother of the New Creation. Now, Elaine and I are Mennonites, the lowest of low church dissidents, yet even we embrace this tradition. We believe there are two compelling reasons for all Christians to celebrate Guadalupe, and both stem from visions of men named John, who God met in the midst of social circumstances of great personal and political distress. On one hand, Guadalupe is an embodiment of the biblical woman clothed with the sun, spoken of by John the Revelator. On the other hand, Guadalupe is the patroness of all indigenous people displaced by colonization, first in Mexico and later throughout the Americas. Let's consider the second story first. La Guadalupana appeared in 1531 to a dispossessed and demoralized indigenous campesino named Juan Diego, only 10 years after the Spanish conquest of Aztec Mexico. The vision occurred on a sacred hill named Tepeyac, where the mother goddess Tonancin's shrine had been destroyed by Spanish priests just a few years earlier. In Nahuatl, Tonancin means our mother. Speaking to Juan Diego in his native tongue, Guadalupe Tonancin assured him that the God of Mary and Jesus actually stood with the marginalized, not with the conquistadores. And ever since, Guadalupe has represented a counter-narrative to the long and lamentable history of European colonization in the Americas.
It is worth exegeting briefly the original image of Guadalupe that miraculously appeared on the tilma of Juan Diego when he went to testify to the skeptical Archbishop of Mexico City about his vision, because it represents a text rich in both Christian and indigenous symbolism. The eyes of Guadalupe look down with compassion, a contrast to Aztec iconography in which the gods typically stare straight ahead fiercely with their eyes wide open. For Aztecs, royalty was carried on the shoulders of someone. So here, Tonancin is born by an angel. Her mantle is turquoise, for Aztecs symbolizing natural forces of life and fecundity, and she is clearly pregnant. The color of her dress is rose or pale red, representing the dawn, and some believe that the stars on her mantle represent a constellation that would have appeared before dawn on the morning of December 12th, 1531, which in the older church calendar was the time of the winter solstice. The girdle around her waist appears to be a four-petaled flower, which to Aztecs represented the Nahui Olin, the flower of the sun, a symbol of abundance. Finally, the luminous aura surrounding Guadalupe represents divine power. The rays of the sun would have been recognized by the Aztecs as a symbol of their highest god. And she stands on the moon. So all the sacred cosmic forces and archetypes of both light and darkness are represented.
This last aspect points Christians to John's vision in Revelation 12. The portrait of Guadalupe corresponds closely with this text in four ways, as so beautifully rendered here by iconographer Bill McNichols. First, this woman is clothed with the sun. Secondly, the moon is beneath her feet. Third, on her head is a crown of 12 stars. And fourth, the woman is in agony of giving birth. Yet she still confronts the great red dragon, taking a stance of nonviolent resistance in the face of the powers of death. Like the Levite mother of Moses in Exodus 1 and 2, this woman gives birth to a son in the teeth of the dragon, nurturing life in defiance of empire. And like Abigail in 1 Samuel 25, who set out a picnic between armed combatants, the woman clothed with the sun confronts a war machine, brandishing only the power of life.
John's main allusion here in Revelation is, of course, to Mary of Nazareth, the courageous peasant girl who birthed Jesus while fleeing as a political refugee from Herod's pogroms. We sing the Magnificat throughout Advent, which celebrates this strong connection between Guadalupe, the woman clothed with the sun, and Mary, the peasant resistor. This song is patterned on the great liberation hymn of the prophet Hannah in the Hebrew Bible. As the Taizé chant says, Magnificat, Magnificat, Magnificat anima mea, Dominum, Magnificat, Magnificat, Magnificat anima mea.
The dragon is one of the many master symbols used by the apocalyptic writer John, who was himself a political prisoner of the Roman Empire in the late 1st century of the Common Era. In the manifesto of Revelation, the dragon represents the lethal violence of the domination system. But John the seer continues in Revelation 12 to promise the demise of this system of oppression, envisioning it overthrown by the nonviolent witness of martyrs. It is in this image that we see the essential connection between Guadalupe and all those who have endeavored through both word and deed to overcome domination by blood and by the word of their testimony, despite the cost. We offered these reflections last week on the occasion of the imprisonment of 2 of 7 beloved Plowshares activists, Martha Hennessy and Carmen Trotta. The 7 did a nonviolent direct action to expose the illegality and immorality of nuclear weapons at the Trident submarine base in Kings Bay, Georgia, on the 50th anniversary of Martin Luther King's assassination 2.5 years ago. Our dear mentor, Liz McAllister, served 17 hard months in prison, and Father Steve Kelly remains in custody since the action. Patrick O'Neill, Claire Grady, and Mark Colville will soon serve their sentences. These Plowshares comrades embody the spirit of Guadalupe, that woman clothed with the sun, resisting the beast of violence.
And alongside these friends are the countless women who have non-violently resisted the beast throughout history. We want to recognize a specific handful who are close to us in time and space. Just last Sunday, our friend Reina Ortega joined us in a tribute to Guadalupe. Reina is a farm worker who stands against the industrial agriculture system here in Ventura County by curating a worker-controlled collective at the Abundant Table Farm Project, and she is a devout follower of the way. 4 years ago this month, many Indigenous women and men stood at Standing Rock, battling the snake of the carbon industry. Let us not forget how these water protectors, armed only with prayer and ceremony, were attacked with water cannons and tear gas by police in freezing weather. Yet they persisted to eventually overturn the legitimacy of the Dakota Access Pipeline. And third, at the beginning of this month, we commemorated the 65th anniversary of the arrest of Rosa Parks, who refused to stand up on a bus in order to stand against American apartheid. And last but not least, my Mennonite great-grandmother, Anna Schultz, who 102 years ago this month stood in the face of a home invasion during the Russian Revolution, and who for 2 weeks fed and cared for the very soldiers who were killing her people and ransacking her home. Itinerant Catholic worker artist Dmitry Kadyev painted this mural of my great-grandmother Anna and other ancestors on our patio wall back in 2012.
This year, Dmitry is in the midst of a California pilgrimage project. He has been walking, holding a banner of Guadalupe and painting images of her all along the route of the 21 missions that colonized California beginning 250 years ago. It is a journey of remembering genocide and praying for restorative justice. In this capacity last month, Dmitry stopped by our home, now named Casa Anna Schultz, and painted a lovely, symbolically eclectic image of Guadalupe on the wall next to Anna. At our request, he indigenized this tradition into our bioregion and history. So we close with a second meditation on the symbology of Guadalupe, inviting each of us to make her story our own and contextualize her mission in our place.
So here is an image of Dmitry's new mural that we sent to Martha, one of the Plowshares activists, last month. The face of La Morena is patterned on that of Toy Perina, the first recorded California indigenous resistor to Spanish colonization. Guadalupe is flanked on her right by California golden poppies and an ocean scene with a Chumash Tomo, and on her left by native Toyon, and a wheat field and a bread baker, which represents my prairie hardscapes. At the corners are the ancient animal symbols of the four Gospels, which are rooted in the four living creatures that pull the divine chariot in the prophetic vision of Ezekiel 1, later recontextualized by John in Revelation 4, 6 to 9.
At the corners, we see Matthew, traditionally represented by a scribe, who in our version becomes the prophet Hannah, whose song inspired Mary's Magnificat. Mark is a lion. Now our endangered native mountain lion. Luke's symbol is the ox, here a grizzly bear, now extinct in California. And John's icon is the eagle, here depicted as a local bald eagle. Underneath Guadalupe is the angel of Harriet Tubman, the great conductor of the Underground Railroad in the mid-19th century America.
We delight in the fact that the deeply Catholic icon of Guadalupe now stands just a few feet away from the earlier mural Dimitri and a community of painters did, narrating the witness of my great-grandmother. The mural included a small portrait of Mennonite movement's founder, Menno Simons, who converted to Anabaptism in 1535. Just 4 years after Guadalupe appeared to Juan Diego, half a world away. God raised up a radical Christian movement in the heart of colonizing Europe to refuse empire from within. This is how the God of liberation finds a way into our demented world, as Merton called it. These ancestors in our faith remind us of the way to which we are called every time we walk out our front door. And of course, this all is very much the substance of our forthcoming book, Healing Haunted Histories.
We thank God that the tradition of women clothed with the sun, standing before the beast, continues in all those who resist domination and oppression in following the way.
In this Advent season, may Guadalupe accompany us closely and compassionately. Let us not doubt that oppression is being overcome by the words and deeds of faithful testimony. May it be so.